Welcome to the Overcommitted Podcast, your weekly dose of real engineering conversations. I'm your host today, Erica, and I am joined by Bethany. We met while working on a team at GitHub and quickly realized we are both obsessed with getting better at what we do. So we decided to start this podcast to share what we've learned. We'll be talking about everything from leveling up your technical skills to navigating your professional development, all with the goal of creating a community where engineers can learn and connect. Today on Overcommitted, we are joined by Elliott Minns, content creator at Dreams of Code. Welcome, Elliott.
Hi, thanks for having me.
To kick us off, what's one thing you're currently building or obsessed with learning right now?
Oh, that's a great question. So currently I'm building what I like to refer to as a next generation video editor. So it's a video editor built using Rust and a lot of Rust technologies as well. And the idea of it is to try to help speed up content creations through like modern tooling. So things like transcriptions, LLMs for understanding kind of the video and the transcript itself and where clips should be placed. And also extending that into like motion graphics and other things as well. So the idea behind it is to not take away from the creativity that kind of a lot of AI tooling seems to want to do at the moment, but instead focus more around, similar to how I guess AI coding is, focus more around augmentation of the creator rather than trying to replace them.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. And both technically and like experientially challenging. Like I feel like anything related to videos is like technically challenging from just like a processing standpoint. And then, yeah, kind of getting that experience right, like finding the right balance between, doing it for you versus suggesting the right places to add. Sounds really tricky.
Yeah. I think there's two technical challenges. One, video editors are very difficult. I kind of went into that knowing that it was going to be difficult, but not knowing how hard it was going to be. So that's like from a technical challenge point of view, it's been really interesting because it kind of touches the entire stack of a computer because it's, you're touching hardware, you're touching media encoding and decoding. You're trying to keep things on the hardware as much as possible, so avoiding copies, zero copy basically. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And the whole time you got to kind of keep it performant and also consider kind of lower end devices such as like the MacBook Neo and stuff as well, which are very constrained in the world of editing video. And then you have the AI side of things, which is really challenging because it's so non-deterministic. And when you're trying to like reproduce a result, it's not always going to be the same. So testing how things work from an AI point of view is very difficult, I find, because let's say it works for me one time when I'm, trying to get it to automatically suggest where footage should be placed. It may not work the next 5 times very well. So it's like trying to tweak it in a way that, okay, it did work once, but I don't know how to measure the performance here across multiple iterations.
Yeah, I wonder if part of it is that like video footage is not as much of general AI model training data.
I was also going to say the economics of it as well are also challenging in a way that I mean, until probably a couple of years ago, we've never really thought about. So like how to manage tokens effectively, how to generate a profit from like a SaaS model. So on average, I think like I can use Claude Code or Codex and they all hook in with MCP. But when I use like some of the newer models, they work really, really well. Unfortunately, if I open that up to users, it would cost me like $2 a video to edit. Now, that's not that expensive for like getting a rough cut. That's actually very cheap when you consider time. But in a SaaS model pricing, it's, customers don't want to think about tokens and they probably don't want to pay $2 for something that could be a bad edit. So it's like very difficult on how to balance that effectively for users as well in order for the economics.
That makes a lot of sense. I work on GitHub Copilot and we recently changed our billing model to be like usage-based billing just because it has been difficult for like to have a business model with AI and making sure that we are tracking those costs. That's a way that's fair for our users, but also sustainable. So it's definitely important to try to get right early on. But yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned efficiency. Is your choice of Rust have to do with that, or is it just something that piqued your interest? Or I'm just curious what your reasoning behind choosing Rust for the platform was.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I actually did a video earlier this year where I was talking about why I was kind of bullish about Rust in 2026, and a lot of that. Yeah, I kind of went through kind of Rust being in a really good spot at the moment. both from like the ecosystem point of view, as well as from where it's placed right now in the world of software development and the current era of more agentic development. So I come from a background of like C++, and I am more like stuck on C++11. I didn't really graduate beyond there. And that's when they started adding in things like smart pointers and other things as well. But C++ is probably my favorite programming language, not because of the syntax, but because of the capability. So you can do anything in C++. It has no kind of upper bound. You can build whatever you want with it. Rust is slowly getting to that point, and I think this year it's started to creep into that. You can build pretty much anything with it. There's like a new Rust web framework that's come out that I'm like starting to dig into, which is absolutely amazing. And it's so like this year, I think is for me a turning point of Rust being very capable. And so coupled with kind of the memory safety that you get, or kind of the static memory safety guarantees that Rust provides, it just made sense to me to try and use it for this project. One, because I do really like the language. It's one of my favorite top 3. And I think it was an interesting experiment to try and see what you could build with it, especially with some of the newer UI frameworks like GPUI, which are built by the team at Zed, compared to using something like Qt, which most video editors seem to be derived from.
Very cool. Well, you were introduced to us partially because you have unlocked the potential of this book that you read, Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, for somebody who said that you encouraged them to read it. So we're hoping that you can kind of talk us through a little bit what your take on that book is, and and maybe why anyone would want to read it.
Yeah, it's a very good book. So I was introduced to it earlier this year at an event for other creators. I was like the only software developer creator, but there was a few others in different niches out there. And one of them had effectively turned content creation into an effective business, basically, where I'm still kind of a solo creator. I do have an editorial team, but at the end of the day, it's mainly just me. And I still sometimes edit my own videos and I do a lot of the work myself. And as anyone who does content knows, it takes up a huge amount of time. And so hopefully, I still love to develop software, and that is my passion. And this year I've done quite a lot of it, but it takes away from being able to actually create content at the same time. So I've been stuck in how do I do this more efficiently? And yet at the same time, how do I continue to write code and develop products and things like that? So from going to that meeting and then hearing kind of a lot of the reviews about the book, and the creator in question did a really nice presentation on everything that they learned and how they took from it, I decided to read it myself, and just to kind of get into a good mindset of buying back your time, which I think is something for me I've always struggled with, because, and there's a part in the book that's actually really, really important, which I kind of needed to be validated on, which is sometimes when you hire things out, it's not going to be done the same way as you're going to do it. It might only get you 80% of the way there, but that's still a lot better than you spending that time to get to 80%, even if you have to do the final 20. And that's something I've been accepting more and more of in this year, and actually just appreciating.
Cool. Yeah. It's interesting, like the use of the word buy, where it feels very like monetary, like, and I don't know, depending on who you are and what your job is, you think of your time value differently. Like, and I can see, as like someone who's more self-employed, you probably think of your time with an exact dollar value versus somebody who's maybe like employed for a company. It's kind of like, well, somewhere in this 40 hours, I'm creating value. Like what that actually means is question mark. And then, yeah, you maybe don't think of like exactly where your time goes as far as like time value, money trade-off.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think as soon as you become self-employed, and it can be very difficult to break away from, hey, I want to do things, but it might not directly result in revenue or money. And that's a very difficult balance to apply, because I like building software just for the sake of building software, but I may not see a monetary return from doing it. So it's kind of a difficult position to be in. And I probably default to those non-money making habits or money making activities quite a lot, but just because I really enjoy it. And that's kind of why I wanted to do YouTube in the first place anyway, because I really enjoy building software and I want to talk about and do it more of. So yeah, it is a fine balance. And I find you have to keep that revenue coming in. And so the best way to have more time to do things that don't necessarily directly generate revenue, although I do think they indirectly do it just because of the passion and the things that I learned from actually building those concepts myself. The only way to be able to do that is to, outsource a lot of the work that I don't want to do, or that I do want to do, but don't have the time to do.
So is there anything else from the book that changed the way that you work or changed the way that you think about working?
I still haven't fully finished the book. So that's the main key takeaway from me at the moment. I do need to get into actually finishing it off and taking it from there, but mainly just about the mindset and the mentality shift of, actually delegating out and being okay with it not being a perfect result.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that applying to like when you work on a team too. This is like, as a senior engineer, you're working with the juniors on your team, or even like delegating out to AI, like, your agents, like, yeah, it's probably not going to be perfect. And like knowing that right off the bat and then kind of knowing how you'll recover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like success is 80% of the way. Success is not 100%. Is probably a good way to think about that.
You actually bring up a really good point. Okay, so another big takeaway from me, the book is kind of in a weird space because it's before, I guess, the AI era. But for me, actually, delegating to humans, I think, is better than delegating to AI, which is a very weird construct. But the next video that I'm working on, which is hopefully going to go up in the next couple of weeks, talks to this point a little bit about how human skills are more of a competitive advantage than the skills derived from an agent. And there's like a couple of reasons for that. And I thought about this a lot. But so I tried to hire a script editor earlier this year, and I didn't end up going through with any of the candidates, mainly because a lot of them were just sending me my kind of story outline, giving it to AI, and then sending it back to me. And I was like, okay, I can delegate that out to AI if I want to. That's not the point of me trying to find somebody. I want to hire somebody who can do the work without AI, because I know that even if you do use AI in your role, you are more capable without having, relying on a tool that I could just then go ahead and ask. So it was kind of an interesting takeaway for me which is why it kind of prompted this video as well. But I think even with software development, having the skills of being able to create software by hand is still rather valuable, even if we're not doing it in the day-to-day, which also brings a very interesting paradox, which is something I dive into on the video a little bit more. But yeah, that was like another big takeaway, but not directly from the book itself. I still would prefer people that have the skills to be able to write scripts, edit video without using AI to do it. But using AI to speed that up is absolutely fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like the most valuable colleagues that I have are the ones that push back or ask me questions and ask me like, why did you do it this way? What were you thinking when you did this? And like, often that happens when you're like passing off an issue or like giving your work over to someone else or in PR review or something like that. And yeah, AI is not as good with that. Like, I mean, it's actually like pretty terrible about questioning me on my own choices. It's very, very yes-anding, no matter what model I use. I know people are like, this model's better, but I'm like, I don't know. They're all pretty flattering to my skills, which
I was using it this morning and I asked it a question about an implementation, or I asked it to implement something, and then it goes and does it, and it goes, okay, good, done, and then you go, okay, but did you do all of it? And he goes, no, I should probably do that next. I'm like, it often tells you what you want to hear, but it doesn't always end up being reality.
Yeah,
I know. I feel like there's been such a conversation lately with where to like use AI but maintain that creativity and where those boundaries lie. And I've heard a lot of like interesting takes on where that boundary is or where they use like AI to boost their creativity. But I'm curious, like, do you have any like specifics on where that line is for you on what those boundaries are? I know you said you've been using it to code, but that it's still important to code. How do you maintain those skills while still using AI?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I think I have like a few thoughts. Okay, so there's the boundary for like a consumer. First of all, I'll start on the consumer and then kind of my own creativity and then my own skills. So as a consumer, and there's been a lot of talk about AI getting better at creative writing, which I think would be terrible if it was good at creating writing, like good enough that you would want to read it. Because for me, I kind of I feel cheated whenever I spend time on something that I know was just AI, that I find out was just AI generated. Even if it like, at the beginning, I find it interesting, and then I find out it's AI and I instantly feel disgust or some emotion, right? Negative emotion. And for me, I think it's because I don't really want to consume something or spend more time or energy consuming something than it took for the creator to create it, if that makes sense. And now I think that varies, obviously. If somebody spent 30 minutes making a video, well, even that's fine. Like, it probably has to be at least a one-to-one distribution. But if I spend 10 minutes reading something that it took somebody 2 seconds of effort to create, that doesn't feel right for me. Like, why would I spend more time on something that you didn't even spend the same amount of time on?
So this is a good transition point to ask you, what motivated you to start content creation? You have a storied career as a developer, and now you've been doing, it looks like professionally, mostly content creation for the past like 3 or so years. So what made you decide to do that switch?
Yeah, so there's a few things, actually. So there's what I thought at the time, and then there's what I now know. So at the time, I had moved from like a software development role into a more manager role, and I needed something as a creative outlet. And YouTube happened to be a really good creative outlet, and because I could talk about videos, I could work on whatever I wanted to from a technical point of view and not be a bottleneck for my team, which is one of the problems, I think, when people get into like management and keep trying to code. Sometimes you end up being a bit of a bottleneck. So I was able to like code on things I wanted to code on, work on things, and then kind of educate through that as well. That's kind of the start of it. And then I kind of gave myself a goal of, if I didn't hit 1,000 subscribers in a year, I would quit. And I think I got it in like 3 weeks or something. So I just decided to keep on with it. And then in 2024, I decided to go full time. And I think it's because I always enjoyed working for myself, and in more corporate or kind of environments, after like a year of any job, I get bored. And I recently found out that's due to ADHD. So I've always struggled to like stay in the same job for a year, because once it's not new or exciting, I tend to drift off from it.
Yeah, I can see content creation as endlessly exciting, because the lifetime of any one thing is from ideation to publish, and then you're on to the next thing.
Yes. Although about a year ago, I started really struggling with some of the tasks of content creation, even though I wanted to make videos on certain topics. It was like, I just could not start scripting for the life of me, or getting set up to film B-roll and stuff. And that, again, is kind of like part of the novelty wearing off, which is what prompted me to actually figure out if I had a problem, which I do, and then get treatment for it, which has helped dramatically.
I was just going to ask, if you mind me asking, how you manage your ADHD with something that's kind of very freeform, like a content creator job.
Yeah.
Are there any specifics or tips you have?
So, I mean, initially it was great because I could lean into the hyper-focus and just constantly work on it. And then once that dwindled, I managed to cope by trying out new things. So different ways of filming, different ways of creating video. That was also really exciting. So that like kept me going for quite a long time as well. I got to learn all about motion graphics. I got to learn all about cameras. So like a lot of picking up new, interesting excitements and coping that way. Now that I've kind of settled on a structure, that suddenly became very challenging because there wasn't a lot of new things to learn. Fortunately, agentic AI about a year ago was new, and that kind of allowed me to hyper focus on that, and then focus on that, and then make videos about that as well. So coping for me has always been like, find something new and talk about it, which actually in content creation is very good. It's just the more I guess process of creating content, especially now when you have a team, you have to structure it a little bit more and have different stages, a bit like having a Kanban board and things like that, where you move through the different pipeline. That became a bit of a struggle, so I had to get treatment to help.
Yeah. There are things that can be very mundane and repetitive, and yeah, that can feel like a total drag.
Yeah.
Where do you get your ideas from?
I guess there's a few different places. So one, lurking online and seeing kind of what the zeitgeist is or the conversation is about, and then having my own opinions and just sharing those through that. Having kind of trusting my own intuition, which is, it's really hard to say, but like, again, kind of wanting to use Rust, seeing that agentic AI was good enough to use Rust and some of the benefits of that, and kind of leaning into that feeling and then making a bit of a bold statement of how I'm, very bullish about it, and then seeing more and more people also be bullish about it in the industry. I think there's very big profile rewrites this year, and a lot of companies are moving towards Rust and are doing so with the use of AI. So that kind of like tracks with my own intuition. And then, if I discover a new tool or discover a new framework that I really like, and I want to share about that, then I'll do that as well.
How much does feedback play into your process? Like, do you solicit feedback from your audience members? Do you like ask specific people for feedback? Do you kind of ignore it and do what you want? Yeah. How do you think about that?
That's a great question. I try to do what I want, but I also do read comments and get feedback as well. And sometimes it'll be like more technical feedback. So, hey, I didn't like this effect on this video. It looked, it reduced the quality or something like that. So that's like constructive feedback that you can take and make sure that you do better technically. Analytics. So why did people drop off at this point? Was I being boring? Did I go on about something too long or waffle on too long? Or did I not have a good point? So that's also good technical feedback of how can I improve my storytelling abilities or the cadence of a video, or make sure that it's engaging and interesting. If people get upset because they think it's clickbait, that's also good feedback, because I don't intend to do clickbait, but if I didn't deliver on the promise of the video, then, I should go away and learn from that as well. I've gotten better about that in recent years, but like at the beginning, sometimes I would give a title and thumbnail that didn't accurately tell the same story. So again, those are things to learn from when it comes to feedback. But then when it's like, hey, this video didn't perform well, or this topic's no longer trending, I kind of want to just still lean into what I'm interested in, just because I think that's the most honest way of doing videos, rather than like chasing trends. And then you get the benefit of sometimes you actually set trends as well, which I think is also a really good position to be as a content creator. So you're talking about things you want to talk about, you're creating content you want to create content about, and then you kind of stand out individually from people that might be just following what everybody else is doing at the same time.
I love that take of feedback from not only a people directly saying, hey, this is how I think you're doing, but also from a like tooling perspective or performance perspective and drilling into that. One thing in this same vein, though, I am very curious about, I think we all know like Hacker News can be a little toxic at times, and a lot of engineering forums can be a little toxic at times. Do you find that it's that way with content you create, or do you feel like you curate a community that tends to be a little like nicer or more productive in their comments?
There's like old YouTube wisdom of don't read the comments. So it can be kind of, I don't know if it's toxic, but it can kind of be like, I shouldn't have read those at times. I think you develop a thick skin for it, right? So I'm kind of a self-deprecating person anyway, so I don't mind it too much. I like to self-deprecate usually as a response to anything that I think is sometimes toxic, or I'll just be mean back. But yeah, it's the internet. People can say things that they don't tend to always actually feel or mean. So I think you have to always look at things through that lens, and software development can be very opinionated maybe. And, that plays into things as well. Sometimes I will have opinions that I change later on. And sometimes I'll change them based on user feedback, or, somebody will suggest a better idea. And being kind of humble about that, I think, is very important as a content creator, and not just sticking by with something that you later find out tends to be not correct. So yeah, there's two different ways of going about it. If people just like generally trolling or whatever, you just have to deal with it. But if people come to you and like offer a better suggestion, then sometimes they can be right. So it's good to kind of be open-minded when you do dive into those community discussions or read into different people's opinions. And unfortunately, in the modern era of social media and distribution, being not aggressive, but being controversial, I guess, or being kind of direct it gives you much more reach. So you have to kind of play into what the algorithm wants sometimes, even if you're doing it with a tongue in your cheek.
Yeah. Before I was a software engineer, I was a music teacher. And so between performing and teaching, I am very used to the like in-person feedback. When you're like in front of an audience, you can tell if people are into the music that you're doing, or like when you're teaching in person, you can tell when somebody gets it. Like it's very obvious. Yeah. Or if they're like not paying attention at all. So yeah, I'm always kind of curious how that translates, especially since you do have a couple of courses now too. You have the Go one available and then the Rust one coming. So yeah, like, and I think your description of finding the balance between, what you want to say and then kind of what you think people want to hear is valuable in any kind of teaching. I mean, I feel like I remember in my school days, like some of the best days were like when your teacher just went on a rant about something and it was like, you didn't really learn anything, but it was just kind of fun to like hear them talk about something that they cared about. So yeah. Yeah. And there's always going to be that person who has something nasty to say. And, it's true in classroom environments too. Like I'm sure we've all experienced in classrooms, there's that one person you're like, why are you here? Why are you doing this?
Yeah. I will say, I think it's one of the nice things about responding to people and engaging with them is sometimes somebody will come in very hot with like a hot opinion or like, sometimes they misunderstand what you're saying. And that's usually your own fault as a content creator because you're trying to reduce the amount of words, but sometimes things get lost. And it is actually very nice when somebody comes in quite hot and you do engage with them and then you end up finding resolution or they end up like, oh, actually, I didn't mean to come in that hot. I misjudged or something like that. I think that's always nice because it shows that sometimes putting in the effort for somebody who may have misunderstood you or you're misunderstanding them and then getting a resolution is just a good feeling.
For sure. Yeah, cool. What advice would you give to anyone who might be interested in starting content creation?
What do I start? It's so difficult. There's a lot of advice. I think learning the fundamentals of content creation is very important because it takes so much time and effort that I think whilst you could just go and create videos, and people can do that if they want to, it can be very disheartening to put hours into something and then nobody watches it or anything else. So I think if it was me again, I would kind of go back and look at, what videos do well? Why do they do well? What's important about it? And then being very self-critical of your own output. Like, hey, why does this suck? What can I learn from this? How can I make this better? That's probably the main advice I could give to anybody. But most of all, be passionate about what it is you want to create content on because it makes the whole thing a lot easier. If you're doing something that you're not passionate about, which sometimes you end up doing in content creation, it just sucks. It's such a huge amount of time and effort. And if you're not passionate about it, it will come through in the videos.
Are there a lot of things that you kind of have on your list and then you end up picking like the one thing that speaks to you the most? Like, yeah, how do you kind of make that happen for yourself of finding things that you're constantly passionate about talking about?
Yeah, so I have like a huge list of ideas that come to me. So I'm okay with ideas. Some people struggle with like what to actually talk about or what ideas they want. For me, that's never been a problem. It's always about which idea should I pick from. So that's probably the hardest thing of, what should I talk about this week or what should I make a video on next? And there's a couple of ways to help with that. So having sponsors helps with that quite a lot because that's a constrained timeline of like, hey, the sponsor wants a video out or they come to you. And because most of the revenue in creating content is sponsors, for better or worse, sometimes by having them, you can choose a video or I can choose a video from my list that best matches with that sponsor. And so it's a forcing function for choosing which video I should work on. So another way is things that are trending or things that are about to potentially become quite popular. It takes a bit of foresight to figure that out, but a good example was the OpenClaw video that I did, or back when it was ClaudeBot. I saw like a lot of talk about it on Twitter like a couple of weeks beforehand. And so I was like, hey, there's people that are very excited about this. Let's give it a go, see if I can make a video about it. And then like the interest died off. I was like, I've already missed the boat with this, but I had a sponsor in line. So I was like, I'll just make the video anyway. And, used it to learn a few new camera techniques and stuff. And then the weekend that I planned to publish it, that's the weekend everybody was talking about it. So it just kind of the stars aligned there. And I was like, very, very lucky. I got a few accusations that I was like a paid shill from the ClaudeBot team because it was like so perfectly timed. Just everybody was talking about it. And then that video dropped that weekend as well. So that was just kind of luck. But knowing that something might be trending is like another skill you have to develop. And then you can use that to help select which videos to produce.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. And how do you manage the technical depth of your videos too? You sort of have this trademark of like really understanding the tech behind what you're saying. So how do you make sure that that's a part of what you create?
Yeah, so there's a couple of layers. It's actually, I mean, I love diving into technicals anyway and jumping in and understanding things. Sometimes I've gotten in trouble because I've cut corners trying to like produce the video quicker and then made a few assumptions. So I try not to do that as much anymore. But sometimes you want to be quick to the mark with the video. So normally I'll just dive in, use whatever it is I'm trying to talk about, and make sure I have a good understanding before I can actually sell a story about it, because that's really what you want to do with YouTube. You don't want to say, hey, this is a thing I've been using, it's great. You kind of want to do a 3-part story of here's the plot, here's the problem, here's the solution. And that's more interesting to most people, even if they're not interested in that tool themselves. Like it's a much easier thing to actually produce a video on and have it be engaging. So that usually helps, and understanding the technicals allows you to describe that story. The other thing is, I guess, explaining it in a technical way is more challenging, because at some point you have to kind of assume a level of understanding that your user or your viewers have, so that you're not kind of going back to the basics of everything. But that's something I don't think I've got a good balance of it yet. I don't know. I still try to cater towards kind of the lowest technical understanding, which I think allows you to have more reach. But at the same time, you end up kind of explaining things that many of your audience might already know. So it's a very fine balance of like, how technical do I go here, and how much do I assume, or how much technical knowledge do I assume my audience already has?
It's interesting. Well, thank you for kind of peeling back the curtain on your process. Yeah, I think anyone who's at a company writing or producing anything that other developers are consuming can for sure learn from how you think about it and your process. So we are getting to time, and we always wrap up with the fun segment, which today we are taking inspiration from the name of your platform, which is Dreams of Code. Although you also have a channel, Dreams of Autonomy, but dreams are still a part of everything that you do, which makes me think of dream interpretation. And for anyone who hasn't done this, it's where people assign meaning to images or experience you have in your dreams. And today I thought, let's see how that might apply to dreams about software. So the closest thing I could come up with here is coming up with several hypothetical dreams that one might have about creating code. I'll describe it in a few sentences, and then we each get to take a chance of saying what we think it means. So I'll read it out, and then we can go around round robin. No pressure. There's no right answer here.
Okay.
And we'll probably have you go last, at least for this first one, so you get a chance to hear how it goes. So here's the first dream. You're in a dark, quiet server room, and there's a cat sitting at your desk with its paws flying across a mechanical keyboard. It's typing fast and confident, like it has done this 1,000 times. You lean in to read the screen, and the code is clean, cleaner than yours. The cat never looks up. So, Bethany, what does this dream mean?
Okay, there's a few things. And why is your desk in a server room? That's first, kind of strange to me. I feel like there's maybe cog in a machine kind of aspect going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's mostly an allegory to AI and AI writing code. And you're like, oh, well, that's better than mine. And accepting that kind of acceptance process and taking in the cat or rejecting the cat. I don't know, however you choose to do that. But
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely feel like for me, the cat is like an alter ego. Like I feel like whenever I'm writing code, like I have the sort of multiple personality thing going on, and like the cat is like the ruthless, super technical, genius side that comes out every once in a while. So for me, that's like, maybe I shipped a PR that I'm like really proud of, and the cat's just like smashing away.
do we know what switches this mechanical keyboard has or anything like that?
Good question.
Say clacky, thocky. I don't know. I think that changes my interpretation.
That's another dream symbol there. All right. What do you think, Elliott?
Yeah, I got to go with Bethany's answer. It's an allegory towards AI-driven development. But the way I think of it is, everybody, not everybody, but if you have a cat and they've walked across your keyboard, you know that it's basically like a random number generator, right? A pseudo-random number generator. And kind of like that is exactly what a technically LLMs are in a weird way. They're basically random number generators, but heavily weighted by what the input is. That's a huge oversimplification. But so if you kind of like couple that your cat now is in a server room, which I guess would again be like a data center, and is able to now randomly generate faster than you can, it kind of fits.
Yeah, cat walking across the keyboard on steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Takes it even deeper. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, well, this next one might even be further down the AI rabbit hole, but we'll see where we land up. I'm not gonna lead the witness here. Okay, dream number 2. You sit down to write some code, and the cursor is moving on its own. At first, you think it's a glitch. Then you realize the machine is writing you, line by line, deciding what you do next and who you are. You try to close the laptop, but your hands only move while the code tells them to.
Okay, I do have a take on this.
Yes.
I don't actually think it's AI. I think it's so. I don't know. When I was like younger in my career, I don't know, maybe even now, but I was like, my identity was so wrapped up with being an engineer. I was like, I am an engineer. This is what makes me great. Like, this is what makes me good at life and things like that. And it's kind of that, like, that process of that thing kind of entirely encapsulating your personality and who you are and things like that. That's going to be my take.
What do you think, Elliott?
I'm going to have to go again the same, because I think that's where I was leading with it as well, of, you know, the more you build software and develop software, and for a lot of people in the industry, that becomes like their daily life, right? It's what it's certainly for me, right? I became obsessed with it once I found out about it, because of like the reward system, the fact that you're constantly learning, constantly developing and solving problems all at the same time. So after a while, it does change you. You start thinking more about code. I remember the first time I looked at a calculator and was like, oh, I could code that probably now. Like, I think it changes your relationship with technology and the way that you think and the way your personality is. So yeah. Same thing as what Bethany says.
Yeah. My take here is the AI overlords are trying to take over my brain. That's my subconscious telling me that they want to automate me and I must fight.
I think that's another good valid interpretation.
All right, dream number 3. Last one. You wake up inside the machine and you are the machine. You can feel the fans spinning up, memory filling and clearing, requests landing faster than you can answer them. Somewhere far off, a person runs the program and you feel yourself begin to execute it. It feels less like thinking and more like being carried along. I can't imagine ever having this dream, by the way. I have a lot of weird dreams. I can't imagine ever feeling like I'm dreaming about being a computer.
It's so funny because I feel like I did have a class in college where it was like we learned how a computer works based on like like Man in the Machine or something like that. Like, and I remember there was like cartoons and stuff of the person like running back and forth between like the registers.
Maybe that's the meaning of the dream, is that you watched that cartoon and then you went to bed.
Oh no. Yeah, that's like when you start dreaming about your schoolwork or your work and you're like, oh no.
Maybe this is like a dream of empathy. You know, you're concerned for all the cloud compute you have suddenly being, you know, overrun and not able to handle the load that it's being projected onto it. So, you know, it's like a dream of empathy. You're trying to feel what it's like to be the computer that you're sending all these requests to.
Yeah.
Who knows, maybe our AI overlords will start being like, hey, you're giving me too much right now. And it'll become a reality. But I like the empathy take for sure.
Yeah. I think that's like where there's literally any layers to this. Like, I can't think of any other interpretation for this other than like you are yourself processing as a machine and churning out as much as humanly possible, or machinely possible.
I can see another, like, I think I mentioned this for the first one. I can see like a cog in a machine kind of allegory here. Like, if you feel like you're not necessarily respected by where you're at, like you're just getting thrown work all the time and you have to like get it done. But like, it's not like you're being appreciated for it. You're just executing it. Like that is your responsibility. But that's my only like deeper take I can think of.
Yes. I like this. Well, if any of us do have dreams about any of these situations, I want to hear about them. Now, maybe I've planted the seed and everyone will dream about these things. Lots of cat keyboard dreams. Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun, Elliott. Where can folks find you on the internet if they want to come looking?
Yeah, you can mostly find me on youtube.com/@dreamsofcode, or I'm also available on X/Twitter @dreamsofcode_IO. I think somebody had the Dreams of Code name. But yeah, those are the two places I'm most active these days. So you can find me on there.
Very cool. Well, thank you, listeners, so much for tuning in to Overcommitted. If you like what you hear, please do follow, subscribe, or do whatever it is you like to do on the podcast app of your choice. Check us out on Blue Sky and share with your friends. Until next week, goodbye.